Is Dark Flare really as bad as you think it is? I used it against the Tombs boss fight, Patient 13, and the Guardian. I tested every single augment, I have the stats, and you might just be sleeping on Dark Flare, because what it's really capable of might just blow your mind. As always with these more analytical videos, be sure to use the chapters below to skip to whatever section you're most interested in, or to the end for the final results. Dark Flare might be the weirdest augment review video we've done on the channel so far, because the most interesting thing about Dark Flare doesn't come with the augments and the augment combinations, rather it comes from Dark Flare itself. But before we get to the really in-depth, interesting, amazing stuff, let's do our due diligence and talk about the augments first. And I guess I should say, Dark Flare, if you don't know, field upgrade in Black Ops 6, you activate it, shoots a little laser thing, and it kills zombies. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Jumping into the first major augment, Extension. This significantly increases the Dark Flare duration. And as we can see right here, I tested this out. By default, our default beam has a duration of 5 seconds. With the extension, that increases to about 8 seconds. And then the Supernova major augment, which we'll talk about later, has a duration of about, it's a little over 5 seconds. It wasn't quite 6, wasn't quite 5. It was kind of weird to tell how it started or when the counter started and when it ended. It was kind of weird, but it was longer than 5 seconds, but it wasn't too long, so about 5.5 seconds. This is actually pretty useful because you are going to get more ticks of damage, so by extending your beam, you're going to be able to deal more damage to the horde or whatever you're shooting at. Skipping all the way down to the first minor augment, Broad Beam, this states that it significantly increases the size of the beam. I'm going to show you side by side. One of these Dark Flares has the wide beam, one of them doesn't. Can you tell? Are you smart enough? Can you pick out which one is the wide beam or not? Keep looking at it. I know it's kind of weird. Yeah, I should mention the third person is kind of weird with this Dark Flare. Even though it's like pointing up into the air all crazy, like it's still just coming out of the center of your screen. So if you're playing in third person and you're freaked out by this, don't worry. Just center your crosshairs and the beam should go where it is. But anyway, broad beam. Can you tell? Can you tell which one has the broad beam? If you said this one, you'd be mistaken. That was the default beam. This is the broad beam here. And I do apologize. This really is the best way I could do it. And this right here kind of gives a good story of the broad beam. Kind of looking at these pillars from this angle, you can kind of see it kind of encapsulates all the zombies right there. Whereas if we look at the default one here, especially once we get going a little bit, you can kind of tell, hopefully, or maybe it was back here. Yeah, right here, you can kind of tell like it's not getting all of the zombies in between these pillars. It's a little bit more narrow. Now, this tells me that this isn't like a cone shape. This is a straight beam. This also tells me that their verbiage of significantly increase the beam size is just a blatant lie. Now, the way I tried to figure out some sort of like number that this increased by is I was on Liberty Falls directed mode. I was shooting the beam down in a straight line and I was seeing when zombies started to die. It was a little janky. I don't really know how else to test it. I was trying to use the floorboards on the ground as straight lines as kind of measurements. And I got the default beam having a width of about 2 meters and broad beam having a whole entire meter. Let's go. Now, a broader beam obviously means that it can affect more zombies, which means you can kill more zombies, which is good. And perhaps before this incredible buff that Dark Flare got a couple weeks ago, maybe this was a little bit more useful because those ticks, you only have 25 ticks for the whole 5-second activation, which we'll get into. I'm saving this to talk about the damage because it's fun. But anyway, this would have been probably more important back when it was dealing like 20% of a zombie's base health. But now that it's dealing substantially more than that, the way you can navigate this beam width, if you're having trouble with your beam width, what you could do this advanced technique called moving your aim. I know it's crazy. It's crazy. You could just move it left to right, wherever you want, and it will deal damage to all the zombies you point this with. Joking aside, I know Dark Flare doesn't look too enticing right now, but it just gets better from here. Moving on to Heavy Shadow. This makes it so that the beam slows enemies on contact. This one is phenomenal. Combined with the now insane damage that Dark Flare does, and you're about to see, putting on Heavy Shadow really reminds me of what Ring of Fire was like. Backing yourself into a corner, turning on this Dark Flare and just killing all of the zombies, and especially slowing all of the zombies and all of the special enemies and the elite enemies. This is a really, really useful minor augment, one of the best. Because yes, like I said, this does work against doppelgangers, it works against manglers, and it even works against amalgams and abominations. Now, I took that excitement, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so awesome. You beautiful people commented on a post that I made about Dark Flare. Hey, does this work against those crazy HVT elites in the Tombs boss fight? So I took it into the Tomb boss fight with Heavy Shadow, this beam that slows enemies on contact, And no, this does not slow that Doppelgas down. It doesn't slow the Amalgam down. The things imbued with the Sentinel artifact, they are going to dart for you. They are immune to all of that. It is terrifying. So unfortunately, Heavy Shadow is not going to help you out in the Tombs boss fight. But what about the Blood Sacrifice, the Golden Armor Ritual? Well, again, took it into there, took it up against Doppelgast, and again, no, this doesn't work against those HVT elite enemies. And I imagine that's how it goes, you know, moving forward. If there's any sort of that really special red glowing HVT enemy, sometimes there's like Manglers on that side quest on Terminus, I imagine it won't work against them. The HVTs probably in the Liberty Falls boss fight, I imagine it doesn't work on them, but the regular elites and the regular specials absolutely does work on them. Mid-match, you're going to have a great time using Heavy Shadow. Extra Charge increases your max charges by 1. This increases your max charges by 1. You can now hold 2 Dark Flares, which is awesome. And it's awesome because it has a secret effect that we're going to talk about pretty darn soon. But first, we have to backpedal to a major augment and talk about Dark Pact. Dark Pact makes it so that the beam heals and revives other players on contact. And so to test this out, I had to do the unthinkable. I had to jump into a public match of zombies. And I gotta say, I was not disappointed. People were going down left and right. Somebody was hitting the box all the time. How do you guys play this all the time in public matches? It was really fun. It was really fun, especially because I was using this Dark Pact of Dark Flare, and this thing's pretty fun in that situation specifically. When another person's down, you activate Dark Flare. Unfortunately, it will revive them, fortunately, but unfortunately, you need to keep the beam on them as long as it revives them. So I guess this would be a good argument to use Broad Beam because that, you know, widens the hitbox you can actually revive other players with. But as our first kind of secret hidden dynamic here, your revive speed will increase if you have Quick Revive. This is so cool. And if the beam ends, like, you know, Dark Flare's over or something, you didn't quite revive them, it will hold that place and you can revive them regularly with, you know, regular revive mechanics, and it will actually save your spot if you're fast enough, just like a regular revive. In terms of healing other players, this will instantly heal other players. Take a look at this gameplay. As I'm constantly shooting this other player, their health immediately went full, and every time they get in contact with the beam, it immediately goes to full, and you can see that green aura, like healing aura there. That's the healing effect, just automatically healing them up. This is actually really fun because not only does it heal them, but it also kills all of the enemies in your way. So if you're just going up to a person, you can kind of scan, like I said, aiming back and forth and just take care of all the enemies, especially with how much damage it's doing now. But then just circling the enemies, because it has infinite penetration. I should mention that too. Dark Flare does have infinite penetration going all the way back, but we'll talk about that later. If you're circling a down teammate, you can really have some good crowd control. It was actually really fun to use this in that public match. And honestly, pairing it with any of the minor augments, Broad Beam, Heavy Shadow, Extra Charge is the one I went with because, you know, having 2 in that public matches was really useful. If you're somebody who loves public matches and you're like the healer, but you don't want to run Dark Flare because it's kind of passive, use this because this was really darn fun. And especially, maybe not even that, maybe if it's not a public match, like if you're playing with your friends who are all relatively good zombies players, you might not want to run Healing Aura because, well, they're good enough zombies players, they kind of go down, but not really. Running this still gives you the offensive capabilities of Dark Flare, but every once in a while, if they do go down, sweet, you've got a Dark Flare, you can heal them from across the map or across the hall or wherever it is, while still maintaining your offensive capabilities. This one was really fun and a huge surprise to me. But now, going from one of the most surprisingly fun augments to possibly one of the biggest disappointment augments, Supernova. This is supposed to replace your beam with a sphere that damages nearby enemies as it travels, and then the ball will detonate at the end of the Dark Flare duration and explode. I know we still haven't talked about the base damage of Dark Flare, but just so you know, Supernova does the same amount of damage as the regular Dark Flare now. This used to be different because Supernova actually used to do less damage than the base Dark Flare. However, the advantage of Supernova is, well, that's the thing. I don't really know why you would want to run this. The only upside I could think of is that this is kind of a set it and forget it type of augment. With the base Dark Flare, your gun is down and you just have the Dark Flare gun, and if you want to do anything, well, your Dark Flare's out and it's kind of awkward, I guess. So running Supernova will allow you to just send out this one beam of damage, and, you know, if you've hoarded up an enemy or a bunch of enemies, and this is really good for that. But that being said, if you've hoarded up enemies, the regular Dark Flare was always good for that. Because, as I mentioned, Dark Flare has infinite penetration. It's not like Dark Flare is this one line of damage. Like I said earlier, you can change your aim. And again, maybe this is because the overall Dark Flare was buffed to make this kind of useless, but just in terms of practicality, I don't see the use case of Supernova. Supernova does work with the other minor augments. It does slow enemies on contact, you know, there's the extra charge, and in terms of, you might be interested in how does it interact with the broad beam effect, we're gonna do our little test again here. Here is one activation of Supernova. You can see it killing all the enemies right there. Yeah, you see, we're looking for the width of it. So now here's a second activation of Supernova, and again, one of these has the broad beam, one of them doesn't. Can you tell which one had the broad beam on it? We'll play these one more time for you. Here's one activation. We're looking for the width of that sphere. Like I said, this is a great horde killing thing, just like the regular Dark Flare, and my gun is up, so that's good. Could you tell which one had the broad beam and which one didn't? If you guessed that this first one was broad beam, you'd be correct. That one was the broad beam, and that would be the default. Broad beam default. Broad beam default. Now, I don't know if these two pictures are like the perfect distance away to tell if it was any bigger, but functionally speaking, just like with the regular broad beam, yes, technically this is hitting more zombies, but again, with the regular Dark Flare, you just move your mouse, you just move your thumbstick a little bit, and you've basically achieved the same effect. So it does technically work, I guess, with broad beam if you want to use it, but like, I'd much rather have two charges rather than just a slightly bigger broad beam. But while Supernova is very functional and very good, and if you like it, it's good, it's fine. If you like the send it and forget it sort of thing, it does work, and that explosion at the end does do bonus damage. It's just that I found, especially with this new update, because it's dealing so much damage, that end of the duration explosion really is kind of hard to take advantage of. Because when you send out the Supernova, it does kill everything it touches. There's really nothing left to be killed at the end of that Supernova blast, but it's also kind of useless because, well, take a look at this clip. This is the end of the, yeah, there you go. It's the end of the Supernova explosion. And as you can see, it's got like abysmal range. I'm using this clip because there's that one zombie right there, like so close to it, and it just doesn't even flinch. And so that right there, that's got to be like 3 to 5 meters. So again, finding yourself in a situation where the Supernova beam doesn't kill a zombie, but it's close enough to be in the explode. It's just, I'm sorry. I tried to make this a good augment if you like it as a horde clearer or just a get out of my way gun. It actually does work as a good get out of my way gun because the sphere of energy does, you know, kill a whole bunch of zombies really quickly. It is a good, you know, get out of jail free card if you are cornered. But other than that, other than these weird niche situations, I feel like just regular Dark Flare is gonna be fine. But enough opinion. Let's talk about facts. Let's get into the fun stuff. Let's talk about charge times. Because this was my very first field upgrade recovering, I had to figure out how field upgrades work, and that was a lot of time, and that took a lot of energy and a lot of hours. But what I discovered is that field upgrades are based on kills. It's not points, it's not critical kills, it's not time-based, it is just regular kills. Special enemies count, elites count, regular zombies count. However, there are a lot of things that do not count. Grenades and equipment kills do not count towards charging. Kill streaks do not count towards charging. Ammo mod kills do not count towards charging. So this is kills that like your brain rotted zombie got. These are kills that the supermassive explosion of Shadow Rift killed. The Napalm Burst kills aren't counting towards charging your field upgrade. These Sam Trial zombies, I guess we should just change this to Purple-Eyed zombies. Any sort of special thing, I could be wrong, it could be dependent on whatever it is, but whenever there was a Purple-Eyed zombie, it just, to me, looking at the footage, didn't count towards charging up. Insta-kills, I have no idea what's going on with insta-kills. I would get kills with insta-kill, and a lot of the kills wouldn't count, but sometimes they would. So I don't know if there's just like a, you know, every 5 kills, you get 1 tally or 1 kill towards your thing. It was really hard to test. It was really wonky. All you need to know that insta-kills will degrade how quickly your augment or your field upgrade charges, but it won't take it away completely, but it will be substantially reduced. All that out of the way, taking a look at Dark Flare by default, it takes about 120 kills, not about, exactly 120 kills to fill up. These were really accurate tests. I'll show you on the spreadsheet here. All I did was track how many kills I got, and then when it ended, you know, the final kill that did it, and a lot of these numbers are really consistent. Again, this spreadsheet will be in the description if you're interested to looking over all this. Like I said, by default, you're gonna get 120 kills, you're gonna get your regular Dark Flare. However, there are some fun things that you could see that affect this. As you can see, if you have the extra charge augment on, that will cause Dark Flare to charge up in fewer kills, 86 kills instead of 120. That is a 30% reduction. And the second charge is the exact same. The second charge will also take 86 kills. So that would be what, like 172 kills to get full 2 charges out of Dark Flare? That's honestly not bad at all. Now, Speed Cola has an augment that increases the recharge rate of the field upgrades. Unfortunately, it only reduced it by 20 kills or about 17%, which isn't terrible. That's a really good passive if you've got nothing else on Speed Cola to run. That's absolutely great. Arsenal Accelerator comes in as our champion, giving us a reduction of 40% down to 73 kills. But what happens when we start combining these things? When you combine Speed Cola and the extra charge augment, you basically get a free 100% of the time Arsenal Accelerator because it only takes 72 kills, which again is that 40% reduction. By the way, that 40% I'm just taking from the inverse of this. Should I change these numbers? Does that make sense to you, beautiful people? Because 72 is 60% of the 120. Should I flip this around? Should I inverse this? Does this make more sense? Percent reduction. So you're reducing it by 40%. You're reducing it by 40%. Does that make sense? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below. When you combine Speed Cola and Arsenal Accelerator, you get the fastest charge time of just 61 kills. That is a nearly 50% reduction. But donuts, how is this the fastest charge time? What would happen if you combined Speed Cola, the Arsenal Accelerator, and the 2 charge augment? Unfortunately, there seems to be a bug with Arsenal Accelerator and the 2 charge augment. When you combine the 2 charge augment and the Arsenal Accelerator, it just gives you back the same exact thing as if you had the 2 charge augment. In other words, Arsenal Accelerator does not work if you have a 2 charge augment. I don't know if this works or doesn't work on the other field upgrades. I just tested out Dark Flare and I was very disappointed because I tested out Speed Cola, 2 charge, and the Arsenal and just got a mere 72 kills, which again is a 40% reduction, but that's what I was doing with just Speed Cola and the 2 charge augment by default. So essentially making Arsenal Accelerator kind of wasted. Not kind of wasted, definitely wasted. I don't know if it's a bug with Arsenal Accelerator that it doesn't combine with the 2 charge new reduction, or I kind of don't want to even say this. I don't know if this 2 charge augment is supposed to give you a reduction. I feel like it should. I feel like it I feel like it makes sense why that is, because then charging up 2 charge of this would take, 240 kills. They don't want it to take that long, so they reduce it a little bit. So I don't know. These are the numbers I got. Do with them what you will. But our weirdness does not end, because there is some weirdness that happens when you have full powers and like extra charges with these with the 2 charge augment. So say you had 1 charge and you were halfway into charging your second charge, and then you used your field upgrade. Well, that would cause that to appear invisible. You're still halfway through your progression, but the bar just becomes invisible. Sometimes it showed up earlier, sometimes it showed up, sometimes it didn't show up at all, but you were halfway through. Very weird visual glitch. What's not necessarily a bug, but something very important to know when it comes to full power and extra charges. I guess a better way of saying this would be picking up a full power only progresses to the next charge. I think this was different in Cold War, correct me if I'm wrong, but let's just say you were 99% of the way to filling up your first charge. So you didn't have a field upgrade, but you were 1 kill away from getting that extra charge. So you didn't have a field upgrade ready, but you were 99% of the way there. You were 1 kill away, and then you see a full power. In my brain, I thought when I picked up that full power, I got like another 100% charge, and then I would be 1 kill away from my second charge because that gave me a whole additional 100%. That isn't how it works in Black Ops 6. If you have 0 charges and you're 99% of the way there to your first charge, and then you pick up the full power, it will grant you that whole 1% to that first full charge. And then you will need to get all the way up to the next charge naturally. Again, not a bug, not a glitch. It's just kind of how the game works, and it's different than how I thought it worked, but I figured it out. And if you didn't know, well, now you know. But now it's time, beautiful people. Now it is time to talk about the damage of Dark Flare. The way Dark Flare deals damage is solely, completely, and only related to the percent of the base zombie health of that round. Let's show you what I mean with this chart. Here we have all the rounds all the way to health cap at round 55, and we have the Dark Flare damage. Now, I calculated this damage because I figured out / the patch notes said that Dark Flare deals 55% of the base zombie health. And so all I did was I took this row right here, this column right here of the zombie health, and then I multiplied that by 55%, and this is the damage that Dark Flare does on every single round to regular zombies. Now, we'll get to elites, don't you worry. Now this was really cool to have because this meant that I could go to any random round that I wanted to. Say I get to round 30, I have this base zombie, and here's the enemy health at round 30. Here's the damage that I tested out physically in game. I did 5,546 damage, which is, 55%. I could then take that number 5546, go over to round 30 and see what our estimated damage was for round 30, 5546. And what do you know? They match up. And this is what I did. I took this all the way to health cap around 55. I played a game of Citadel Demo around 55, and I predicted, of course, just calculating 55% of this zombie health of 50,000 at health cap would be 27,500. I played the game. I did a test round 56. Here we go at health cap. And what do you know? 27,500. Beautiful. However, what else you can see is that this number is kind of different for a lot of different things. Unfortunately, one of the biggest disappointments that I had was that armored zombies take less damage until their armor breaks. They are consistently only dealt 35% of their base health until their armor breaks, and then they will deal the normal 55%. I will say this isn't as big of a deal as you might think. It's just one extra tick of damage, essentially taking them from a 2-shot kill to like a 3-shot kill, or even a 4-shot kill if they have a lot of armor or something. Moving on to special and elites here, this is a little weird. Doppelgasts and mimics and, well, sort of manglers, all normal, nothing different about them. They're getting the 55%. Mangler's damage, armor is a little bit weird, but at least mimics and doppelgasts, they were getting the same 55% of the base zombie health. And that is what surprised me. I thought when I was first setting out to do this, I thought that I would need to calculate the elite health of every single round and the special health of all of these different special zombies. I did a lot of work that's not on this spreadsheet, but I left a little bit of it up here because what I did to test out, if you're wondering how I figured out this health right here of the elite enemies, I went into a game of the Tomb. I used Death Perception's Death Stare because that will get you the automatic insta-kill, and I whittled down the health of an Amalgam until I had, less than 10, 20%, whatever it was. And then when it just disappeared out of existence, it shows you the health that it has total. And so I saved and quit, came back, did that, saved and quit, came back. It was a bug round, saved and quit, came back. And that's what I did for those rounds until I realized that the amount of damage Dark Flare does is not dependent on the health of the enemy you're shooting. It's dependent on the health of the base zombie of the round, which is incredibly simple. But donuts, I hear you say. If specials and elites are just the same 55%, why does my Dark Flare deal such different damage to all of these different enemies? This is where it gets interesting. Because you see, amalgams are weak by default to shadow damage, meaning that when you use Dark Flare, you are 100% of the time getting that bonus like 50% damage to that amalgam. As you can see right here, round 16, this is the base zombie health. And on round 16, we would expect our Dark Flare to be dealing about 575 damage, but instead it's dealing 861 damage, comparing that damage that we're actually doing with the damage that this says we should be doing. We're actually dealing 150 extra damage, or 50% bonus damage. And that comes down to the elemental damage that we've already calculated way back with Deadshot. This is so cool. And it gets even better when you put on elemental pop with Vulnerabine. You are dealing nearly 100% of the base zombie health. Now, that might not mean much to you practically, but it means you're getting about 175% bonus damage if you're using the element. Well, you're using Dark Flare, so you have the elemental damage plus the Vulnerabine augment for elemental pop. You can easily take down these amalgams in like one duration of Dark Flare if you have the extension and you have Vulnerabine on early into the 30s, even before round 30. This is so useful. And as amazing as it is for amalgams, whatever you do, do not use them against abominations. It is absolutely useless against abominations. The reason being, I believe, I don't know this for sure, I don't know coding or anything, I'm just a nerd with a spreadsheet. It seems as though the abomination has special damage modifiers, both for its critical spot as well as its like husk or skin or just the regular hitbox around it. Even if the Abomination is shooting you, lasering you, exposing its weak spots, the Dark Flare is not going to give you an increased damage. It's actually going to get a substantially reduced damage. Because like I said, I bet you the normal hitbox actually reduces all incoming damage like bullet weapons and all that stuff, and that applies to Dark Flare as well. I don't know if it's a bug, I don't know if they want it to be that way, I don't know if they could code it any different way, but just for your information, Dark Flare, Abominations, pretty darn useless. But now I see you eyeing these things down here. Don't worry, we'll get to that stuff. Now I want to talk about Supernova just really quickly here. The Supernova, like I said, deals the regular 55% of base damage. It's completely normal, just like regular Dark Flare. But at the end, like I said, because it was so difficult to find a zombie that actually got in the range of the last explosion of the Supernova, the only numbers I could find at maximum were only 200% larger than the base health instead of 300. I'm not super confident about this one, but you could see here it was round 11. Like I said, Liberty Falls, round 11, 625. It doubled that base health, you know, 200% there. It could be 300. There could be some other stuff going on, but like I said, that explosion at the end is kind of hard to get into. So functionally, it could be like an insta-kill or 1,000 damage, and I still feel like it would be pretty useless. Practically, I guess. Practically would be really hard. Now, Donuts, what does this mean in terms of zombies at health cap? Well, if you're talking regular base zombies, because it's dealing 55% per tick, it means that you only need 2 ticks to kill a base zombie at any round. Because it's percentage based, as the zombies get more health, you are dealing more damage with Dark Flare. And as we said earlier, there's 25 ticks every 5 seconds, so that's 5 ticks a second. That means you only need to get your Dark Flare on a zombie for about 4/10 of a second, 2/5 of a second. Armored zombies, like I said, maybe 1 or 2 more ticks. And with the special elemental damage and vulnerability, when it comes to the amalgams, at round 56, you're dealing 48,125 damage. If you only have the base variant, that means you are going to deal over 1 million damage if every single second of that Dark Flare usage you're pointing at the amalgam. You are easily gonna kill it in one activation of the base form of Dark Flare, not including the extension, not including the extra charges. I can attest, even before this buff, Dark Flare was phenomenal. It was my go-to of the tomb of dealing with these amalgams. It is awesome. This really feels like they want it to be their Ring of Fire replacement. But now we need to talk about the bosses, the Guardian and Patient 13. Because Dark Flare scales with the zombie health, that logically means that at health cap, Dark Flare is dealing the maximum damage that it possibly can. But just how good is that maximum damage against something like the Citadel boss fight? Well, I took it in at round 55 or 56 or 57, wherever it was, and well, I activated, and as you can see, it's pretty darn effective. The Guardian, I knew this was a thing before, but it's still the case now. You can deal enough damage to the Guardian to entirely wipe out one of its phases with a single activation of Dark Flare, asterisk, I was using the extended augment. This wasn't the base Dark Flare. I wanted to go all out. I used 2 charges and extend it. So just as a reminder, extended beam extends it for another 3 seconds, which means I got another 15 extra ticks of damage, which is exactly what I needed to take out a third of the Guardian's health and progress an entire wave of the Guardian. And yes, this worked with the other 2 phases as well. I think I used Arsenal Accelerator, or I used maybe a Power Keg to refill my field upgrade, and I was able to beat the Guardian basically only with Dark Flare. I did shoot him a couple times because I was a little nervous. I was a little like afraid to what to do. You know, it was round 55 or whatever, and people were super sprinting at me. I've never done an Easter egg or fought a boss that high of a round before. It was exhilarating, but yeah, there you go. It's basically Dark Flare only Easter egg. Unfortunately, running that back again and doing it at a much more reasonable round 27, I was dealing substantially less damage to the Guardian, and as you can see, yeah, it's pretty pathetic on a normal round. However, between these 2 activations on round 57 and 27, it's consistently 24.75% of the base zombie health. So much like the Abomination, there's gotta be some sort of like modifier coming in for all the damage, and I don't know how it works. I just thought it was cool that both of these numbers were 24.75%. So unfortunately, unless you're going for a really, really high round, the Guardian's not super practical. But what about Patient 13? Now, specifically, well, Patient 13 is kind of a mess because he's got like 87 different weak spots that are all weak to different elemental damage. And yes, I tested out like the tentacles, I tested out like his regular form in the first phase, and yeah, they did some damage. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great. That is until we get to the final stage where he's actually weak to Shadow Rift damage in his blue phase, and on an early round 26, this is what Dark Flare did. Look at that damage. Once again, not only are we dealing damage to him through Dark Flare, but this is elemental damage plus Vulnerabine, which is giving us extra damage on this weak spot. And I had 2 activations of this, or somehow got 2 activations of this, and I was able to clear that third phase with just 2 activations of Dark Flare. Again, I think I did have on extension with that as well. It wasn't as swift and like as awesome as the Guardian was, but that is super fun and super useful and definitely really practical. I know that third phase of Patient 13 still gets me to this day, and I really like Dark Flare now, especially now I'm really liking it, so that might be my go-to for Terminus from now on, especially because I love running Napalm Burst because he is really weak to Napalm Burst in the first phase, second phase is decently easy, and then you get that third phase with Dark Flare. Oh my goodness, this is so cool. But I tell you, it gets even cooler, sort of, because the story of how I got this damage opened my eyes to one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my YouTube career. You might be wondering how I figured out what a tick was. Well, after running a couple things, looking at some footage, I was able to actually count how many times that the damage ticked on an enemy. And especially when I had like an Amalgam isolated, or really what helped out was that round 57 boss fight on Citadel, I was able to count how many ticks of damage I did so long as I was accurate enough, and then I was able to see the amount of time I was accurate and, you know, uninterruptedly dealing damage, and then I could count the ticks that were within that time, and it very consistently got me to 5 ticks a second. Now, Donuts, how is that one of the biggest mistakes of your YouTube career? Well, the cool thing about that is that because the Guardian really evenly split up into 3 separate phases, I was able to do some calculations and figure out, well, exactly how much health that this boss has. So what I did was I took the Guardian at around 57, 12,375 damage per tick, right? So then I come down here, 12,375 right there. I multiply that by 40 because I was using the extension, which gets me 40 ticks of damage, basically 40 shots of damage. And I used it one time to get through one phase, which means that one phase of the Guardian is about, 500,000 health. We multiply that by 3 for 3 phases, and we get a health of about 1.5 million health, which is really cool to know. I did something very similar to Patient 13. I used, this damage right here, around 26, whatever. I had to use 2 extended usages, so that's times 80, which got me a little bit over 500,000, multiply it by 3 phases, and he also has 1.5 million health. Now that got me thinking, I've been telling everybody, of all of my 100,000+ subscribers in like every single analytics video that elite enemies like Amalgams and Abominations have 1.5 million health at health cap. I've made countless spreadsheets and charts detailing how fast weapons kill at health cap. And so I thought, you know what? Let's do this for the Amalgam. So I did the same thing for the Amalgams. I took some footage, counted out how many ticks I was dealing, how much damage I was doing, and I figured out that the Amalgam at health cap really only has 1 million health points, which is great news. It's great news. It means all of our weapons are way more effective than we thought. But the bad news is I've been telling everybody wrong this whole time that it was 1.5 million health, but it's only 1 million. I'm so sorry. Going forward, I will update the numbers, but I just wanted you to come on that journey with me because that is unfortunate. Now, I kind of was clued in on this because when doing the golden armor upgrade and using the death perception thing, that also, when it killed those elites, it also said 1 million health or 100,000 health or something like that, which clued me into maybe I was wrong. But thanks to Dark Flare and how cool and awesome it is, I found out for certain. Once again, I'm so sorry. So So what did we learn? Extension increases the beam duration from 5 seconds and 25 ticks to 8 seconds and 40 ticks. The Supernova shoots a sphere that damages enemies as it travels, and it does explode once Dark Flare is done. This deals the same amount of damage as the normal Dark Flare at 55 damage per tick, and then it will explode and deal 200% damage. However, the patch notes said 300% damage, so I very well could be wrong, but according to the numbers that I saw during testing, the most I ever saw was 200% damage, unfortunately. But practically speaking, Supernova is really kind of just pointless. The only benefit of Supernova is the fact that you can send it and forget it. Dark Pact makes it so that the beam heals and revives other players. This will instantly heal your allies if they're up. Unfortunately, the revive acts like a normal revive and you'll have to maintain your aim on the downed player in order to revive them. Luckily, a hidden ability is that this works with Quick Revive. If you have Quick Revive, the revive will be faster. Broad Beam slightly increases the width of the beam from 2 meters to 3 meters, or you could just move your aim. Heavy Shadow slows enemies on contact with the beam. This affects zombies, specials, and elites. However, this does not affect the HVT elites like the Blood Sacrifice Ritual for Golden Armor or the Tomb Boss Fight elites. Extra Charge will increase your max charges to 2, but it will also decrease the amount of kills required to charge your Dark Flare from 120 kills to 86 kills, which is about a 30% reduction. In terms of Dark Flare itself, this is one of my favorite field upgrades from now on. This is definitely their Ring of Fire replacement. It feels that way. It's really fun. Damage is always a percentage of the base zombie's health at whatever round you're at. Your Dark Flare will deal 55% of the base zombie health, 35.75% damage to armored zombies. Once the armor breaks, it will go to the base damage. Specials and elites aren't affected technically, like mimics and doppelgasts. However, the Abomination has that special modifier on its hitbox to substantially reduce the damage that you deal to it, so it is absolutely garbage against abominations. You cannot even critical shot it. Amalgams, especially with Vulnerabine, get bonus damage on top of the 55% because of Vulnerabine and the elemental damage. The Guardian's damage is going to be about 24.75%, which is nothing really important until you're at a really high round. It's really cool to go to a high round and do that thing with the Guardian. You could basically kill the Guardian just with a Dark Flare, but if you're on any sort of normal round, it's going to be basically pointless. However, when it comes to Patient 13, during that final stage, when he's in stage 3 and when he's weak to shadow damage, you are dealing 120% of the base zombie health towards Patient 13. And if you have the extension and extra charge, you can finish that third wave of Patient 13 in just those 2 activations. When it comes to charging Dark Flare, a secret ability of that extra charge will reduce the amount of kills it takes to charge up your field upgrade. Speed Cola, Arsenal Accelerator are great options for reducing the charge up time. However, the best pairing has to be Speed Cola and extra charge, giving you 72 kills instead of 120 kills. Of course, the fastest though is Speed Cola and Arsenal Accelerator, only requiring 61 kills, nearly 50% of the time it takes for you to charge Dark Flare. And there seems to be some sort of bug or weird interaction with the extra charge and the Arsenal Accelerator. So if you're running extra charge, just do not run Arsenal Accelerator. You're not getting anything out of it. In terms of augment recommendations, extra charge and extension are gonna be my go-to. However, if you really want the Ring of Fire effect, pairing extension with Heavy Shadow that slows the enemies on contact makes you nearly untouchable. You are giving up that extra charge, but if you're saving it for like Amalgams or those special rounds or just panic situations, that is another amazing combination. If you're playing public matches or you want to reserve some offensive and defensive healing ability, Dark Pact is really not that bad either. Unfortunately, Supernova feels a little bit useless to me. I really couldn't find a way to make it work. And Broad Beam, again, unless I'm testing something wrong, please let me know. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to find out something even better about this field upgrade. But those two seem to have the least amount of utility to them. My goodness, beautiful people, I am so sorry this took so long to get out. But as you could tell, beating all of these Easter eggs multiple times, going to round 55 and plus in Citadel Daymore, beating the Guardian at round 57. I've never done that before. This took so long. I am a huge fan of Dark Flare. Like I said, it really does feel like that Ring of Fire replacement, except it's a little bit more balanced, which means it's a little bit less overpowered. But after all this testing, this really is becoming one of, if not my favorite field upgrade. It just feels so good to melt those amalgams so quickly. And you better believe I'm gonna be using it during that Patient 13 boss fight from now on. Now, if this deep dive wasn't nerdy enough for you and you want want even more spreadsheets, you are going to love this video. Be sure to check it out, and as always, stay beautiful.